Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Hit the bell for new stories. The sun set on the dusty plains of Mars, casting long shadows over the bustling spaceport as Noah Waverly stepped off the shuttle. He had never been the type to volunteer for outlandish assignments, but this one was different. The program had promised an extraordinary opportunity, living with an alien species. Not just any alien species but the Arisians, a pair of telepathic twins, known throughout the galaxy for their advanced intellect, their mysterious ways, and their ability to harmonize with nearly any sentient species. Noah had heard about them from the few other humans who had visited their homeworld in the Gliese system, and rumors swirled about their uncanny ability to understand emotions without words, to communicate through touch, and to manipulate the physical world in ways that defied the laws of physics. The Arisian twins, Mira and Vile, were highly revered for their symbiotic relationship, an almost mystical bond that allowed them to communicate effortlessly, a bond so strong that they were inseparable. But Noah wasn't here for the myths or the wild stories, he was here to get answers. Earth had established an uneasy peace with the Arisians, and the chance to live among them for a month would provide invaluable knowledge. Knowledge that could change the future of humanity's place in the cosmos. The moment he stepped off the shuttle, he was greeted by a pair of figures who could only be the twins. They stood at the edge of the landing strip, their silhouettes illuminated by the fading light, a mirror image of each other. They were taller than Noah, with features both alien and familiar. Their smooth, dark gray skin shimmered slightly under the Martian sun, and their hair was an iridescent, silvery white hue that seemed to shift with every movement. Despite their otherworldly appearance, their eyes were the most captivating part, vast pools of liquid violet, shimmering with a depth that seemed to go on forever. The twins studied him with a look that seemed to pierce straight through his thoughts, as if they were already aware of him, his history, his hopes, and his fears. There was no need for introductions. It felt as if they had always known he was coming. "Welcome to Ares," Mira's voice echoed in Noah's mind. It was soft but firm, rich with an alien cadence that made the words feel like music rather than speech. He realized immediately that they weren't speaking aloud. This was telepathy, and it felt strange. A ripple of warmth and calm washed over him, like a gentle wave rolling over the shore. Vile spoke next, and his voice mirrored his sister's, though it had a slightly deeper timbre. "We are ready to begin, Noah. Your journey starts now." For a moment, Noah felt a shiver run down his spine. He hadn't expected the mental connection to feel so visceral, so intimate. It was like they had already unlocked a piece of his mind, his very soul. And while it was overwhelming, it also felt oddly comforting, like coming home after a long, difficult journey. Noah nodded, trying to shake off the sensation, but the twins could clearly sense his unease. "We understand this is overwhelming," Mira said softly. "It will take time, but we will help you learn." With that, the twins led him away from the landing platform and toward their home, a massive structure that seemed to have grown organically from the Martian terrain. The building was unlike anything Noah had seen before, not built of metal or concrete, but of a translucent material that looked almost alive, shifting with every step they took. The walls seemed to breathe, responding to the twins' movements and their thoughts, glowing faintly in the twilight. As they entered the home, Noah felt an immediate sense of peace. The walls pulsed gently with a soft blue light, and the air smelled faintly of lavender and something uniquely alien, almost like the scent of a distant star. The twins led him to a room that felt oddly familiar, as though it had been specifically designed for him. A comfortable bed, a desk with strange instruments, and a large window that looked out over the Martian landscape. But what caught his attention most were the two seats in the center of the room, positioned side by side. It was clear that the twins intended to spend the next month in close quarters with him. "You will be staying here with us," Vile said, his voice resonating in his mind. "We will guide you through the process, help you understand our ways, our thoughts. And you will share yours with us." Noah sat down in one of the chairs, trying to take in everything at once. He was supposed to learn from them, yes, but what did they expect in return? What could a human possibly offer to beings so far beyond Earth's current understanding? But before he could voice his concerns, Mira's voice filled his mind once more. "Do not worry, Noah. We are not here to test you. We are here to learn from each other." The words echoed in his mind, but they weren't just words. They were an invitation, a bond being offered between them, something deeper than any mere exchange of information. For the first time, Noah realized this was not just an experiment. He wasn't merely a subject, a guest. He was part of something much larger. And that realization both terrified and exhilarated him. As the evening passed, Noah found himself growing accustomed to the twins' mental presence. They did not push him but instead allowed him to adjust at his own pace. His thoughts slowly started to open up to them in ways he hadn't anticipated. He could feel their thoughts brushing against his own, a steady rhythm of emotions, ideas, and images. The experience was like being submerged in a sea of understanding, each wave pushing him closer to the core of who they were. By the end of the first night, Noah knew one thing for certain. This month would change him in ways he couldn't yet comprehend. The morning came swiftly, though on Mars time seemed to flow differently. Noah had hardly slept, his mind buzzing with thoughts and sensations from the previous evening. He awoke to a strange, quiet hum reverberating through the walls of the room. At first, it felt like a dream, a lingering trace of the telepathic connection he had shared with Mira and Vile. But when he opened his eyes, he realized it was not a dream at all. The twins were standing in the doorway, looking at him with the same serene, knowing expressions they had worn the night before. Mira's violet eyes glowed faintly, her silver-white hair cascading over her shoulders like liquid light. Vile, always the quieter of the two, had a slight smile on his lips, though there was something unreadable in his gaze. "You did not sleep, Noah," Mira said, the words filling his mind before his eyes could focus on her. "I couldn't," Noah replied, still groggy from the restless night. "There's so much going on in my head. I don't know how to keep up." Vile nodded, his expression calm and thoughtful. "It is normal. We are connected and you are not yet used to it. Our thoughts are strong and we communicate in ways that humans have not yet learned. You must not be afraid of this connection. It will become clearer with time." Noah sighed, rubbing his temples. "It's just so much. Your thoughts, they're not like anyone else's. It's like I'm part of a giant, cosmic web, but I'm still trying to find my place." "We understand," Mira replied, her voice soft yet firm. "That is why we will begin your training. Not just in understanding our thoughts but in harmonizing with them. Your mind is strong, Noah, but it is still isolated. You will learn how to feel us, to become one with us, and in return we will learn your strengths, your human way of thinking." Before Noah could respond, Vile extended a hand toward him, and a strange, invisible force pulled him gently out of the bed. The sensation was both foreign and familiar at once, like being lifted by the wind, yet the wind was inside him. Noah found himself standing on his feet, fully awake now, his body tingling with the sensation of their shared energy. "Today you will learn to focus," Vile continued. "Not just with your mind but with your emotions. Let them be your guide." Mira stepped forward, her presence overwhelming in its calmness. "Do not be afraid of what you will feel. We are not here to harm you. We want you to experience what it is like to understand, to truly feel the universe." The twins' hands moved together, and Noah's mind expanded, suddenly overwhelmed with a flood of images and sensations. He saw the stars, the ancient stars, swirling in patterns that felt both deliberate and random. He felt the pulse of distant planets, the rhythm of galaxies moving through the void. And through it all, the twins were there, not just guiding him but becoming him, their thoughts weaving together with his, sharing their experiences of the universe's deep mysteries. Noah's chest tightened as he felt the intensity of their bond, their power. He felt the flood of emotion, the quiet beauty of the cosmos, the terrifying loneliness of space, and the overwhelming peace that came with understanding. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, the connection faded. He was left standing in the center of the room, breathing heavily, his heart racing. Sweat clung to his skin, and his mind spun with the weight of the experience. "You see now, Noah," Mira said, her voice soothing. "We are part of the universe. We do not simply exist within it, we are woven into its fabric. Our minds are connected to it, to all things." Noah struggled to speak, his breath still coming in uneven gasps. That was like nothing I've ever felt. You don't just communicate with each other. You feel everything around you. Everything." Vile stepped closer, his presence calming in its simplicity. "Yes. And now you will learn to do the same. It begins with the mind but it ends with the heart. You must learn to trust it." The room was silent for a moment, the only sound the soft hum of the building's energy. The hum, Noah realized, was not just a random noise, it was a part of the home. Like everything else in this strange alien place, it resonated with the twins' telepathic connection. The walls, the floors, the very air seemed alive with thought, and Noah could feel it now, like a quiet, steady pulse beneath his skin. For a while they sat together in silence, the twins allowing him time to process. Noah could sense them, feel them, even without them speaking directly into his mind. There was an intimacy in that silence, a shared understanding between them that transcended words. After a while Mira's voice returned, gentle but insistent. Now you will learn to reach out. Not to us but to the world around you. Stretch your mind, Noah. Feel the pulse of this place. Noah closed his eyes trying to focus. He reached out with his senses, letting the quiet hum of the room wash over him. It was as if the very air itself held the universe's secrets, waiting for him to understand. He reached deeper into the walls, into the floor, and there. A faint shift in the energy, a slight tremor in the material around him. He gasped. I felt it. I felt something. Vile smiled, his face a picture of calm approval. You have the potential, Noah. But this is only the beginning. The day stretched on, with the twins continuing to teach him how to tune into the subtle vibrations of the universe. It wasn't easy. His human mind struggled to comprehend the infinite connections that the twins could sense without effort. But with each lesson he felt himself growing closer to their level, understanding more deeply the vastness of the cosmos that they inhabited. By the end of the day, Noah was exhausted, his mind stretched to its limits. But there was also a sense of awe, a deep connection to something beyond himself. The twins had shown him a new way of seeing the world, and it had shaken him to his core. As he sat alone in his room that night, Noah wondered just what the next few weeks would bring. He had come here for knowledge, but he was beginning to realize that the knowledge the twins offered was something far more profound than he had ever expected. The question now wasn't whether humanity would benefit from this connection. It was whether Noah could ever truly return to his old life after experiencing the universe in such an intimate way. The third day in the twins' home was different. It felt different in the air, shifting, almost electric, and Noah could sense the change though he couldn't fully grasp what it meant. By now, he had grown accustomed to their constant presence, the way their thoughts brushed against his in waves, their emotions threading through his consciousness like a continuous river. The twins had spent hours guiding him, not only in connecting with the world around him but in learning how to tune into the deeper layers of the cosmos itself. But today they seemed more focused, more intent. He woke early to find both Mira and Vile already seated across from him in the main room, their violet eyes fixed on him, their expressions unreadable. Mira, always the more expressive of the two, gave him a small, almost imperceptible nod. Vile's gaze was more intense, like the quiet, unyielding force of a distant star. Today, Mira began, her voice like a melody in his mind, you will begin to understand the deeper connection we share, not only with the cosmos but with each other. Noah frowned, confused. I thought I was already starting to get it. The connection, the energy, it feels like I'm part of something bigger now. But you too, how do you do this? I can barely keep up. Vile's voice, deep and steady, washed over him. It's not just about keeping up, Noah. It's about surrendering. Understanding this bond isn't a task or a skill to be mastered, it's an experience to be lived. What we share is not simply a connection of thoughts or ideas. It is a bond that transcends time, space, and even existence itself. Noah leaned forward, his curiosity piqued. So, you're saying, it's more than just telepathy? Yes, Vile answered simply. It is communion. When you think of us, think not of communication but of unity. Everything in this universe exists as part of an intricate web. And we, Mira and I, are two strands woven together, inseparable. What you feel from us is the result of millennia of that bond, of growing together, of merging our minds, hearts, and souls. Noah's thoughts swirled in confusion. A bond like that? The idea seemed impossible to him. How could two beings be so connected? So in tune with each other? How could they know everything about each other without speaking a single word? He couldn't even imagine such an existence. But he didn't have the time to dwell on it, for Mira's voice pulled him back into the present. Close your eyes, she instructed, and Noah did as she asked, his mind still racing with questions. Let go of the thoughts that weigh you down. Empty your mind of fear. We will show you. At first, nothing happened. Noah simply sat in the quiet of the room, the gentle hum of the house filling the silence, but the twins remained still, their presence a constant pressure in his mind. He felt the weight of their attention on him, a constant hum beneath the surface of his thoughts, always there, always alive. And then, slowly he felt it. A subtle pulse, like the rhythm of a heartbeat, coming from somewhere beyond him, beyond the room, beyond the walls. The feeling spread outward, drawing him in. It wasn't a single thought or idea, it was a feeling, a wave of pure, unfiltered emotion. It was warmth, it was love, it was the deepest longing and understanding. He could feel them, not just their presence but their essence. Mira and Vile were not separate entities, he realized. They were a single, unified whole, a perfect symmetry of thought and emotion, a dance of minds that had evolved together for longer than Noah could fathom. He gasped, suddenly overwhelmed. This is what they mean, he thought. Unity. His body seemed to float, his mind expanding outward like ripples on a pond. The pulse of the twins' bond surrounded him, wrapped around him like a cloak of warmth, yet it was not his to control. It wasn't an experience that belonged to him alone, it was an experience shared, a gift they had given him. Feel it, Noah, Mira's voice whispered in his mind. Do not fight it. This is the essence of who we are. This is the symbiosis that binds us. It is not something you can learn, but something you can become. His chest tightened with emotion, something he couldn't explain, couldn't put into words. This was more than just telepathy, more than just a connection. It was communion, a union of souls, the sharing of everything. It was everything he had ever felt, every sorrow, every joy, all wrapped into a single moment, a single understanding. For a brief second, Noah thought he could see through time. He saw the twins not as they were now but as they had been, small children on their homeworld, growing up together, learning together, becoming one. He saw them connected always through every hardship and every triumph. Their bond was older than the stars themselves. And Noah realized with a jolt, he had been granted a glimpse into something sacred, something far beyond the realm of human experience. The vision faded, leaving him breathless. His heart pounded in his chest and he opened his eyes, unsure of what he had just experienced. Mira and Vile were still in front of him, their expressions unreadable, but he could feel them, feel the unity between them, feel the space they had opened within him. Do you understand now? Vile asked quietly. I think so, Noah stammered, his voice shaking with emotion. But it's so overwhelming. I don't know how to process it. Mira reached forward, her hand touching his. There was no physical contact, yet the sensation of her presence filled him completely. The warmth of her energy flooded into him, and he felt his body relax, his thoughts slowing. You don't have to process it all, Noah, she said softly. It will come with time. You have begun to see the truth of our bond, but you must allow it to grow within you. We are here and we will help you, but you must be patient. Vile nodded. Trust in the process. Let go of your need for control. Noah exhaled slowly, trying to calm the storm of thoughts in his mind. It wasn't easy, his human mind was not made for this kind of connection. But what the twins had shown him was profound, and he felt a deep, unspoken gratitude for the experience. He couldn't yet fathom what this meant for him, for humanity, but he knew this much: he was no longer the same. The past few days had altered something fundamental in him. There was a new sense of purpose growing inside him, one that was as vast and mysterious as the cosmos itself. I'll try, Noah said quietly, his voice steadying. I'll learn. Mira and Vile smiled, and for the first time, Noah saw a flicker of something in their eyes: pride. It was as if they were seeing something in him, something they had known was there all along. Good, Vile said. The journey is just beginning. The next few days felt like an uncharted territory, a surreal space between dreams and reality, where every moment seemed to stretch and fold in on itself. Noah had grown accustomed to the constant hum of the twins' presence in his mind, their thoughts brushing against his in ways he hadn't yet learned to understand. But there were other shifts, subtle ones that he couldn't ignore. He was no longer simply a visitor in their world, he was becoming part of it. His training with Mira and Vile had intensified. Each day the twins taught him how to navigate the inner landscapes of his mind, how to see beyond the surface of things. They taught him the language of energy, of thought, of feeling, and soon Noah found himself able to reach out with his own consciousness, not just sensing the hum of the cosmos but interacting with it, manipulating it in ways that defied all logic. At first it was simple, pushing a stone across the floor with his mind, guiding a beam of light through the air. But with the twins' patient guidance, the exercises grew more complex. Soon, Noah was manipulating the very fabric of space itself, bending it, folding it, creating shapes and forms that only existed in the space between thoughts. The experience was both exhilarating and terrifying, as if he were teetering on the edge of an abyss, unsure of how far he could go before the world unraveled completely. But it wasn't the physical feats that troubled Noah. No, it was the deeper, more insidious changes that were happening to him, changes in the way he thought, the way he felt. The more time he spent with Mira and Vile, the more he found himself thinking like them, feeling like them. Their emotions were no longer something he could simply observe, they were something he was beginning to share. One evening, as the twins guided him through a particularly intense meditation exercise, Noah experienced something he hadn't expected. His mind was open, stretched thin, and he could feel the twins' energy flowing through him like a river of pure sensation. He reached out for something, anything, that could anchor him to himself, but instead, there was only a sudden, overwhelming wave of them. In that moment he felt every memory, every thought, every emotion that the twins had ever had. He felt their love for each other, a bond so deep it could never be broken. He felt their pain, the weight of loss that had shaped them, that had defined their existence as a pair. He felt their joy, the pure, untainted joy of discovery, of understanding, of seeing the universe not as a collection of stars, but as a living, breathing entity. And then, just as suddenly as it had come, it was gone. Noah opened his eyes, his heart pounding in his chest. He was trembling, as if he had been holding his breath for an eternity and had only just now been allowed to exhale. What was that?" he asked, his voice raw with emotion. Mira was standing beside him, her expression unreadable. Vile was behind her, his gaze steady and calm as if nothing had happened. "You experienced us, Noah," Mira replied gently. "You touched the essence of our bond. That was the depth of our connection. It is not something you can fully understand yet, but you felt it. You felt us." Noah swallowed hard, trying to make sense of what had just happened. He felt as if he had just been plunged into the very heart of the twins' existence, a place so intimate and sacred that it made his own identity feel insignificant in comparison. But it was more than that. He had felt something he couldn't quite explain, a sense of overwhelming belonging. It was as if the universe itself had opened up to him, showing him a truth he wasn't ready for. "I didn't know it was possible to feel something like that," Noah murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. Vile stepped forward, his tone soft but filled with a quiet authority. "That is the power of unity, Noah. You've touched the core of what we are. The next step is learning how to sustain it without being overwhelmed. The bond is not a gift to be discarded. It is a responsibility." Noah blinked, his mind spinning with the implications of what Vile had said. Responsibility. The word echoed in his mind, settling there like a weight he hadn't expected. He had come here to learn from the twins, to uncover the mysteries of the universe, but what he had just experienced wasn't just about knowledge. It was about sharing. It was about becoming part of something greater. But as the days passed, Noah began to realize that this connection, this bond, wasn't without its challenges. The deeper he delved into the twins' way of being, the more he felt himself losing touch with his own humanity. He was beginning to think like them, to feel like them, and while that was extraordinary in many ways, it was also profoundly unsettling. There were times when he no longer felt like himself, when the thoughts that surfaced in his mind didn't feel like his own. The twins' emotions were infecting him, seeping into his every thought, until he could no longer distinguish his feelings from theirs. One evening, as they sat together in the central chamber, Noah suddenly found himself unable to speak. Mira and Vile were discussing something about their shared vision of the universe, about their plans to expand their reach into other star systems. But Noah wasn't listening. He was listening to something else. A deep, gnawing sense of unease had settled within him. His thoughts were clouded, fragmented, and for the first time in weeks, he felt an undeniable pull toward Earth, a longing so strong it almost overwhelmed him. He missed his home, his people, the simple, tangible reality of his life on Earth. This bond, this unity with the twins, had been intoxicating, but now it felt suffocating, as if he had been absorbed into something larger than himself and could no longer find his way back. He stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. Both twins turned to him at once, their eyes sharp and attentive, their mental presence pressing in on him like 1,000 voices in his head. "Is something wrong, Noah?" Mira asked, her tone soft yet filled with concern. Noah's chest tightened, and for a moment he didn't know how to respond. He wanted to tell them everything, about the growing sense of isolation, about the way he was losing touch with himself, about the longing to return to Earth. But he couldn't find the words. I need some time alone," he finally said, his voice strained. "I need to think." The twins exchanged a glance, and though they didn't speak aloud, Noah could sense their understanding. They were no longer pressing him for answers, no longer probing his mind. Instead they gave him the space he needed. "Take your time, Noah," Vile said gently. "We will be here when you are ready." Noah nodded and walked away, his mind a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. The connection had changed him, there was no denying that. But whether that change was for better or for worse he wasn't sure. And as he gazed out the window into the cold, barren expanse of Mars, he realized something else. He might never truly be able to return to the life he had known. Not after this. The twins had shown him a new way of being, a new way of feeling the universe, but at what cost? Noah spent the next few days in relative isolation, retreating to his private quarters within the twins' home. The immense silence of the Martian landscape outside his window was both comforting and suffocating. He stared out at the red dust swirling across the barren plains, but his mind couldn't settle. Every time he tried to focus, the pull of the twins' presence surged in the back of his mind, like a quiet tide that wouldn't leave him alone. The bond that had once seemed so beautiful, so liberating, was now a constant pressure, a weight on his consciousness. He had come to realize something that troubled him deeply. The twins, for all their wisdom, for all their kindness, had pulled him into their world in a way he wasn't sure he could escape. The unity they shared, the closeness they had built over millennia, was something Noah could never replicate. His human mind, with its frailties and limitations, was beginning to feel like an inadequate vessel for the depth of the connection they shared. And that realization filled him with dread. He couldn't help but wonder if this was part of their design, whether they had intended all along for him to become a part of their symbiotic existence. After all, they had shown him how to merge with their thoughts, how to feel the universe through their eyes. But now that he had tasted that depth, he found himself recoiling from it. He had lost touch with his own humanity, his own identity, and it terrified him. The twins had given him space as they had promised, but Noah knew they were still watching him. Their presence in his mind was like a quiet hum that never ceased. It was as if they were always there, waiting for him to return, to engage with them again. But Noah wasn't sure if he was ready to re-enter that world. Not yet. It wasn't until the 5th day of his retreat that Vile came to him. Unlike the twins' usual visits, which were marked by their telepathic whispers in his mind, this time Vile stood at the door of his room, his physical form more imposing than Noah remembered. The Martian light caught on the silver sheen of his hair, giving him an almost ethereal quality. His violet eyes met Noah's, and for a moment, there was only silence, an understanding between them, unspoken but undeniable. "You've been avoiding us, Noah," Vile said softly. His voice was calm, not accusing, but Noah could feel the weight of it pressing on his chest. "We know you are struggling. But we are here and we are not going anywhere. You need to face what you have learned." Noah's heart skipped a beat. He hadn't realized how much he had been avoiding the twins until now. He hadn't wanted to face the truth of his feelings, the truth that had been growing in him like a thorn buried deep inside. His mind was at war with itself, torn between the comfort of the bond he had shared with them and the suffocating sense of loss that was now gnawing at him. "I didn't ask for this," Noah replied, his voice hoarse as if speaking the words aloud made them more real. "I didn't ask to be absorbed into your world. I didn't ask to lose myself in it. I can't live like this." Vile stepped closer, his presence steady and unyielding, but there was no judgment in his gaze. "You misunderstand, Noah. You have not lost yourself. What we have shown you is not a dissolution of your identity, it is an expansion of it. You are still yourself. You are just learning to be more." Noah shook his head, standing up from his chair, his pulse racing. "You're not listening to me. I'm not just learning to be more. I'm losing who I am. I can't tell where your thoughts end and mine begin. I can't even remember what it was like to be just me anymore." Vile paused, allowing the silence to hang between them for a moment. "We never intended to take away your sense of self, Noah. We only meant to show you a different way of being, a way that expands the boundaries of your mind. You are still human. You still have the capacity to be unique, to choose your own path. The bond we share is not one of domination, but of mutual understanding. You have the power to control it, to shape it as you wish." "But how?" Noah's voice cracked. "How do I take control when I feel like I'm being swept away by something so much bigger than myself?" Vile looked at him with quiet intensity. "The bond is not a flood, Noah. It is a river, always moving, always changing. But you have the ability to swim against its current. You only need to believe that you can." Noah closed his eyes, taking a deep breath. There was something in Vile's voice, something grounded and unwavering, that calmed him. But the fear still lingered. Could he really take control? Could he really separate himself from the overwhelming connection he had formed with the twins? The idea seemed impossible, but somewhere deep inside, Noah knew that Vile was right. He had to try. "I'm not sure I know how," Noah admitted, his voice quieter now, more vulnerable than before. Vile's gaze softened. "You will learn. We will guide you, but the journey must be yours to take. We cannot live your life for you, Noah. You must find your own path, just as we have found ours." Noah's heart ached with the weight of those words. It was true. The twins had their own journey, their own bond. And while they had shown him things beyond his wildest imagination, the choice of what he did with that knowledge was his alone. The realization was both freeing and terrifying. "I'm scared," Noah confessed, the words slipping out before he could stop them. I don't know what happens when I step away from this. I don't know if I can go back to Earth, or if I even want to anymore. Vile nodded as if he had expected this. Fear is a natural part of growth. But you must face it, Noah. You cannot move forward without confronting it. Noah let out a shaky breath, the weight of the decision bearing down on him. His mind, so used to the constant flow of the twins' thoughts, now felt achingly quiet. He wasn't sure what to do next, but he knew one thing for certain. He couldn't stay in this limbo forever. He had to make a choice. You're right, he said slowly. I can't keep running from it. I have to find a way to control it, to control myself. Vile's expression softened, a faint smile touching his lips. That is the first step, Noah. You have taken it. Now we will help you take the next. And as Noah looked at Vile, the fear that had held him so tightly began to loosen, just a little. There was still uncertainty ahead, still the unknown, but for the first time in days he felt like he could face it. He wasn't sure how to untangle himself from the bond, how to preserve his humanity without severing his connection to the twins, but he was ready to try. The days following Noah's conversation with Vile were filled with a renewed sense of determination. For the first time since he had arrived on Mars, he wasn't simply being swept along by the currents of the bond between himself and the twins. He was actively choosing to understand it, to take control of his place within it. The twins, sensing the shift in his resolve, had given him the space he needed but also the tools. Mira and Vile were patient, guiding him step by step as he began to unearth parts of himself he had long since buried. They encouraged him to sit with his thoughts, to feel the emotions that rose in him without judgment, to let them pass through him like clouds across the sky. It was a practice in mindfulness, a way to distance himself from the overwhelming unity he had shared with them, to once again become his own person. Noah sat in the quiet of the central chamber that evening, his legs crossed beneath him in a meditative posture. His eyes were closed, but his senses were wide open, stretching out into the vast, undulating rhythm of the cosmos. It was difficult at first. Every time he focused, the pull of the twins' thoughts brushed against his mind like a whisper. But he didn't push it away. He let the sensation wash over him, let it merge with his own. It was a delicate balance, trying to distinguish his thoughts from theirs. But as he practiced, he began to feel a subtle shift. Instead of being swept away by their presence, he learned to acknowledge it, to appreciate the bond without being consumed by it. Slowly, the oppressive weight that had once settled over him began to ease, replaced by a quiet understanding of the connection they shared. He was still himself. Noah took a deep breath and exhaled, the tension in his body melting away with each release. His mind was clear, no longer clouded by the flood of shared emotions. For the first time in weeks he felt truly alone, but not in the way he had feared. It was a peaceful solitude, one that allowed him to reconnect with his humanity. Good, Mira's voice came softly in his mind. You are making progress, Noah. But remember, true mastery of this connection comes not through control, but through acceptance. Noah opened his eyes, blinking as the room around him came into focus. The faint glow of the Martian landscape outside the window bathed the room in a muted light, casting long shadows across the floor. He stood up slowly, feeling the shift in his body, the way his movements had become more fluid, more deliberate. He had learned to quiet the storm inside his mind, but the sense of oneness with the universe still remained. Only now it was his choice to engage with it. How do I know when I've truly mastered it? He asked aloud, the question lingering in the stillness of the room. Mira and Vile were standing at the doorway, their forms as luminous and imposing as ever. Vile, with his quiet strength, met Noah's gaze, his eyes filled with a deep understanding. You will know when you no longer fear the connection, Noah. When it is no longer a force that pulls you, but a companion that walks beside you. Noah nodded, the weight of Vile's words sinking in. He had feared the bond, had feared losing himself to it. But as he stood in the room now, surrounded by the stillness, he realized that the fear had dissipated. The bond had not swallowed him. It had simply revealed a deeper layer of himself, one that he had yet to fully understand. The twins stepped forward, and as they did, Noah felt a subtle shift in the air, like the atmosphere itself was responding to their presence. The energy between them pulsed with the same rhythmic hum that had once overwhelmed him, but now, it felt like a melody he could follow, a song that had been playing in the background of his life without his awareness. I think I understand now, Noah said, his voice more steady than it had been in days. This isn't about control. It's about harmony. Mira smiled softly, a gleam of pride in her eyes. Exactly. It's about finding balance not just between you and us, but between your own humanity and the cosmos. The bond we share is not a hierarchy, it is a dance. A flow. You are not losing yourself. No. You are becoming part of something larger, something more expansive than you can imagine. Vile stepped closer, placing a hand on Noah's shoulder. His touch, though not physical, was a grounding presence. A reminder that Noah was still human, still grounded in his own experience, even as he reached toward something infinite. This connection, Noah, Vile continued, his voice soft but firm, is not a thing you can control. It is not an object to be grasped. It is a relationship. It requires trust, patience, and the ability to surrender to what is. You must trust in yourself and in us. Only then can you fully embrace the unity that exists between us. Noah felt the weight of those words settle within him, like a truth he had always known but had never allowed himself to fully accept. The fear that had once gripped him was now gone, replaced by something stronger, something that was both exhilarating and humbling. He wasn't losing himself. He was expanding. "I'm ready," Noah said quietly. The words were simple, but they carried a depth of meaning that went beyond their surface. And just like that, the twins opened their minds to him once again. This time it wasn't overwhelming. It wasn't suffocating. It was an invitation to explore the vast reaches of the universe together, to walk the path they had paved for millennia. The flood of sensation was still there, but now it felt like a river he could swim in, not a storm that threatened to drown him. He could feel the pull of the twins, their thoughts and emotions flowing through him, but they no longer overwhelmed him. Instead, they felt like a melody he could follow, harmonizing with his own thoughts, his own heartbeat. Together they stood on the edge of something vast. Noah had always thought of himself as small, insignificant in the grand scheme of the universe. But now, standing beside Mira and Vile, he realized the truth. He was not small. He was part of something much larger, a living, breathing web of connection that spanned the universe. "You have taken the first step, Noah," Mira said, her voice warm with approval. "But there is still much to learn." "I'm ready," Noah repeated, his voice firm now. "I want to learn. I want to understand. I want to become." Vile's expression softened, and for the first time since Noah had arrived on Mars, he saw a true smile on the elder twin's face. "Then come," Vile said. "There is much more to show you." Noah stepped forward, his heart beating with purpose. The path ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear. He was no longer alone. The twins were beside him, and together they would explore the depths of the cosmos. And in doing so, Noah would discover not just the universe, but himself. The following weeks passed in a blur of discovery and transformation. Each day, Noah learned more about the bond he shared with Mira and Vile, and with it he began to unravel the deepest parts of himself, parts he hadn't even known existed. The twins, though they were bound together by their shared existence, treated him as an equal now, showing him the vastness of the universe not through a lecture, but through an experience that changed him on a fundamental level. It was clear to Noah now that the connection between them wasn't simply about power or knowledge, it was about sharing. It was about vulnerability. As he moved through the training exercises, it wasn't just his mind that expanded, but his very sense of self. He learned that the twins had never wanted to erase who he was, they only wanted to show him that his humanity was an integral part of a much larger picture. One evening, as he sat cross-legged on the smooth surface of the training floor, Noah felt a familiar pulse at the edges of his awareness. Mira and Vile had returned to their usual quiet presence, allowing him to meditate and reflect. But tonight the air felt different, charged with something he couldn't immediately identify. He reached out, sensing the calm, cool rhythm of the twins' energy around him, but then something shifted, a subtle pull toward the edges of his mind. He opened his eyes and found Mira standing across from him, her violet eyes glinting with something that could only be described as anticipation. Vile stood beside her, his posture relaxed but alert, as though waiting for a signal. "Noah," Mira said softly, her voice gentle but laced with intent. "You've made great strides in understanding the bond we share. But there is one final lesson we must teach you. It is time for you to take the next step, not just in your mastery of the connection but in your understanding of us." Noah's brow furrowed, confusion creeping in. "I thought I already understood. I've felt the universe in ways I didn't know were possible. I've shared emotions and thoughts with you. I've been with you." Vile nodded, his expression solemn. "What we have shared with you so far is only a fraction of what the bond can offer. What you feel with us is the surface. What lies beneath, Noah, is something far deeper." Noah blinked, his pulse quickening. He was no stranger to the depth of their connection. It had consumed his thoughts and dreams in ways that had made him question his own sanity. But now Vile's words echoed in his mind like a distant drumbeat, reverberating through his very bones. "What do you mean?" Noah asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Mira stepped closer, her presence warm and reassuring as if she could feel the apprehension in him. "The connection between us is not just an exchange of thoughts or emotions. It is a living bond. One that intertwines our very essences, our souls if you will. The more you learn to navigate this bond, the more you will understand the depth of what it means to truly merge with another being." A chill ran down Noah's spine. The idea of merging, of blending so completely with another entity, filled him with both awe and fear. He had already shared so much of himself with the twins, had already opened parts of his mind he had once kept locked away. But the thought of merging on a deeper, more intimate level, it terrified him. Could he do it? Could he truly surrender himself to this connection without losing who he was in the process? "You have nothing to fear," Vile said, his voice calm but firm. "What you fear is the loss of self. But you will not lose yourself, Noah. You will simply become more than you were before. This is the next stage of your evolution." Noah stood, his legs stiff with a mixture of uncertainty and anticipation. "But how do I even begin? How do I know I'm ready?" Mira smiled, a gentle curve of her lips. "The first step is trust. You must trust in yourself, trust in the bond we share, and trust in the process. You have already walked this path even if you didn't realize it. This is not a leap, it is a step you have already begun to take." As Noah stood there, unsure of where this final lesson would take him, he realized that the twins were right. They had not pushed him into anything. They had only guided him, step by step, teaching him to be present in his own mind, to experience the universe in ways he hadn't even known were possible. But this was something different. This was about surrender, about giving up control in the truest sense of the word. "I trust you," Noah whispered, his heart pounding. "I trust both of you. But I'm still scared." Vile placed a hand on his shoulder, and once again the sensation was not physical, but emotional. It grounded him, reminding him that he was still himself, that he was not losing himself in this journey. "You are not alone in this," Vile said, his voice like a calm anchor. "We are here, Noah. We will walk this path with you." And with that, Noah closed his eyes, taking a deep breath, and allowed himself to step forward into the bond. The sensation was unlike anything he had ever felt before. At first, there was a soft buzzing at the edges of his consciousness, as if the entire universe were vibrating with life. Then it was as if his mind was expanding, stretching out into infinity. He could feel Mira and Vile beside him, but they were no longer separate from him. Their thoughts, their emotions, their very essences, blended with his own in a way that defied logic. There was no distinction anymore. There was no Noah and Mira and Vile. There was only one presence, a vast, interconnected web of thoughts and feelings and sensations. For a moment, panic gripped him. He could feel the edges of himself blurring, the boundaries between his identity and theirs melting away. But then, like a wave washing over the shore, the panic receded, replaced by an overwhelming sense of belonging. This was not a loss of self, it was a discovery of something far greater. The bond was not just a connection, it was a merging of souls, a fusion of all that they were. And in that fusion, Noah realized that he had become something more. He was not just Noah, the human from Earth, but a part of something ancient, something eternal. The twins had shown him a path he never thought possible, a path where fear no longer held power, where unity was not a loss but a gift. As the connection deepened, Noah felt the universe open before him, its vastness no longer intimidating but beautiful, intricate, and filled with infinite possibilities. He was no longer simply an observer. He was a part of it. And in that moment he understood. He had not lost himself. He had become something new. And in that newness he found his place in the universe, not as a human, not as a student, but as a being connected to all things, walking beside Mira and Vile on a journey that would never end. Together they would explore the farthest reaches of the cosmos. And Noah, now fully part of this extraordinary bond, was ready to face whatever came next. Noah's consciousness expanded further, beyond the walls of the Martian base, beyond the very limits of the planet. He felt the pull of the stars, the shifting motions of distant galaxies, each one a rhythm, a beat, a pulse in the grand orchestra of existence. And through it all, Mira and Vile were beside him, not as two separate beings but as one entity, a singular force of thought, feeling, and energy that was both part of him and yet still distinct in ways he couldn't fully understand. The unity wasn't overpowering but rather exhilarating. It was as if every part of his mind was now in harmony with the cosmos itself. He could see the flow of time like a ribbon winding through space, each moment a distinct bead on the string of infinity. The twins had opened this door, but he had walked through it willingly. Now he stood in the vastness of it, not alone, but connected to something much greater than himself. At first, the vastness of it was overwhelming. The awareness that everything was interconnected, that he was no longer just Noah, but part of something infinite, left him breathless. It was as if his sense of self had become stretched thin across the fabric of the universe. But instead of losing himself, he felt his identity solidify in new ways, ways that felt both comforting and liberating. "You are not just a traveler of space, Noah," Mira's voice whispered through his mind, though her presence was now less a voice and more an energy, a gentle hum within him. "You are a traveler of consciousness. The universe is not just around you, it is within you. And you are within it?" Noah's heart pulsed with understanding. He wasn't just experiencing the universe as an observer, he was part of it, part of a larger cycle of existence. The stars weren't distant objects, but parts of him, just as he was part of them. In that moment, Noah realized how truly small and yet infinitely significant he was in the grand expanse of space. And it wasn't terrifying, it was beautiful. He could feel the interconnectedness of all things, the profound unity that bound the universe together in ways that defied comprehension. But even amidst this boundless connection, he didn't feel lost. He didn't feel as if his individual identity had been consumed. Instead, it felt like a fusion, a celebration of all that he was and all that he could be. His humanity, his memories, his emotions, they hadn't vanished. They had simply been woven into something much larger, more expansive, more alive. "It's incredible," Noah whispered, his voice full of awe, though he wasn't sure if the words came from him alone or from the collective consciousness that now encompassed all three of them. I didn't know I could feel this." Vile's presence was like a steady hand on his shoulder, guiding him through the vastness without ever imposing. His voice, now more of a feeling than words, drifted into Noah's mind. "This is just the beginning, Noah. The universe has been waiting for you to see it, for you to understand it as we do. But your journey, like ours, is not just about discovery, it is about becoming." Noah's chest swelled with a profound sense of purpose. He understood now what the twins had meant. Their journey had not just been one of exploration, but of evolution. Every moment, every thought, every breath was part of a continuous cycle of growth, learning, and becoming something more than what they had been before. And now he was part of that evolution too. The bond they shared was no longer just a tool for understanding, it was a way of existing. It was a mode of being that transcended what he had once thought possible. He could feel his mind reaching out in ways that were both alien and familiar, touching the essence of things he had never imagined. He could feel the pulse of distant stars, the hum of galaxies far away, and even the quiet energy of the planets in his own solar system. He reached out not just with his mind but with his heart, and as he did, he felt the vastness of existence open before him like a map, with endless possibilities stretching out in every direction. The fear he had once felt, the fear of losing himself, was now replaced by an overwhelming sense of wonder. He was not losing anything. He was gaining everything. "You are ready now, Noah," Mira's voice, gentle but filled with unspoken pride, resonated in his mind. "Your place is not just among us but among the stars. The universe has always been waiting for you to awaken to its true nature. And now you will walk that path with us." Noah felt a surge of gratitude, so strong it almost overwhelmed him. The twins had given him more than just knowledge, they had given him the keys to the universe. But more than that, they had shown him that his humanity, his unique experience as a human being, was a vital part of the whole. Without it, the bond wouldn't exist. Without him, the universe would be incomplete. And yet, as he looked out across the vast, sprawling expanse of the cosmos, Noah knew that the journey was far from over. It was just the beginning. There was still so much to learn, so much to experience, and so many places to explore. But now he was no longer an outsider to the universe. He was a part of it, intricately woven into its fabric, and the possibilities were endless. "Where do we go from here?" Noah asked, his voice filled with a quiet excitement. He had asked the question as much to himself as to the twins. His thoughts were still spinning, still adjusting to the enormity of the connection, but he was no longer afraid. He was ready for whatever came next. Vile's presence enveloped him, like a reassuring embrace. "Wherever you choose to go, Noah. Wherever your heart leads you. The universe is vast and there are countless worlds to explore. But know this, no matter where you travel, we will be with you. You are never alone." And as Noah stood in the infinite expanse of existence, side by side with Mira and Vile, he realized something profound, something that had been there all along, but had only just become clear to him. The journey wasn't about discovering new places or even new worlds, it was about becoming. Becoming more than he had been. Becoming part of something greater. The universe had always been waiting for him to find his place within it. And now he had. With the twins by his side, with the knowledge of the cosmos at his fingertips, Noah stepped forward into the vast unknown. He wasn't just living anymore. He was alive in ways he had never imagined. And as he moved forward into that infinite horizon, he knew that he would never stop discovering. The journey was just beginning, and there was no telling where it would lead. But wherever it was, Noah was ready. The end. Thanks for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more exciting HFY stories. Your support means the world to us. And make sure to tap the bell icon so you never miss an update. Stay tuned for our next adventure, and until then, keep exploring the stars. See you in the next video.